Asterisk, asterisk, I was 30 minutes away from closing a $65 million deal when my boss's son fired me. Not for incompetence, not for misconduct, but because his Instagram girlfriend needed my job. Asterisk, asterisk, let that sink in. 7 months of negotiations, 42 document revisions, 3 regulatory roadblocks cleared at 2 in the morning, and I was dismissed like an intern who forgot to attach a PDF. It was a Friday, 4:15 in the afternoon, the kind of late winter Chicago light that turns the glass towers pale and unforgiving. I had just finished reviewing the TechFlow Industries acquisition agreement for what had to be the 40th time. $65 million, not our largest deal, but large enough that I had personally shepherded every clause, every disclosure, every comma. 2 days earlier, I had been sitting across from Patricia Wells at the Union League Club. She had leaned in, lowered her voice, and said, "Dan, you understand our business. That matters." I remember the way her fork paused midair, the trust in her eyes. That was Wednesday. By Friday, I was being summoned like a liability. The email was brief. "Please come to my office immediately." Bryce Caldwell, not my supervising partner, not someone who had ever sat across a negotiating table with me. The founder's son, 32 years old, Stanford MBA, newly installed chief operating officer after what the firm newsletter called a comprehensive strategic review. Translation, Daddy stepped aside. I walked the long hallway toward the corner office that used to belong to a man who had practiced law for 45 years. The law books were gone. In their place stood motivational posters about disruption and synergy. A standing desk with 4 glowing monitors, designer sneakers resting on imported mahogany. Bryce did not look up when I knocked. "Sit." The chair was low, deliberately low. I noticed things like that. Taylor sat in the corner with a laptop. She was supposed to be taking notes. The screen reflected Instagram. Bryce steepled his fingers. "We need to discuss your trajectory here." "My trajectory?" I asked evenly. "Is there an issue with the TechFlow closing?" "It is not about one deal," he said. "It is about digital evolution, generational alignment, strategic direction." I have billed more hours than any non-partner at Caldwell for 6 consecutive years. My client retention rate is 94%. I brought in $8 million in new business last year alone. But yes, let us discuss alignment. "What exactly are you saying?" "Today is your last day." He slid the packet across the desk with the casual indifference of someone ordering coffee. "Non-disclosure agreement. Non-compete clause. 7 months of severance if I remained quiet. You are firing me the day before TechFlow closes. Taylor will handle the transition." I turned slowly toward her. She offered a smile that never reached her eyes. "Taylor has a marketing degree, a certificate in social media optimization." Last week, she asked our paralegal what due diligence meant. "She is not licensed to practice law," I said carefully. "She cannot legally advise on corporate transactions." "That is no longer your concern," Bryce replied. "You have 1 hour. 1 hour. 24 years of my life fit into bankers' boxes." As I packed my framed certifications and my daughter's Father's Day mug that read, "World's okay, Dad," I felt something shift inside me. Not panic, not rage, clarity. They could escort me out of the building. They could revoke my email. They could lock my office. But they could not confiscate 24 years of relationships. They could not delete the trust I had built. They could not erase the quiet network of CEOs, general counsels, and board members who had my personal cell number because they trusted me more than the firm letterhead. Security walked me through the marble lobby. The portraits of 3 generations of Caldwell attorneys stared down at me as if I were already forgotten. I handed over my key card. But as the cold air hit my face outside, I was not thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about Tuesday morning, the Chicago Mergers and Acquisitions Bar Association meeting at the Standard Club. 47 senior corporate attorneys in one room, and every single one of them would want to know why Daniel Morrison was suddenly available. If you have ever been replaced by someone unqualified, you already know something important. Competence does not disappear when a title does. And what happened next was not revenge. It was consequences. I sit in my home office at 5:30 that same evening, still wearing my suit. The house is quiet, too quiet. Austin is back at Northwestern for the semester. Sophie is at her mother's place for the weekend. The silence presses against my ears like altitude. On the dining table in front of me sit three banker's boxes, 24 years reduced to cardboard and packing tape. For about 10 seconds, I allow myself to feel it, the humiliation, the disbelief, the cold, precise fear of a 50-year-old man with 13 working years left and tuition bills that do not care about corporate politics, $32,000 due in 8 weeks, $18,000 a year for Sophie's school, $2,400 a month for my mother's assisted living, alimony that does not stop until I turn 62. My jaw tightens. Then I open my laptop. Shock is expensive. Strategy is not. The first thing I do is reread the non-compete agreement Bryce slid across that desk as if he were handing me a lunch receipt. Illinois law is clear. Non-competes are enforceable only under reasonable conditions. Consideration matters. Termination without cause complicates enforcement. Bad faith can unravel the entire structure. And firing your most senior deal attorney the day before closing to install your unlicensed girlfriend? That smells like bad faith. I do not smile. I do not celebrate. I simply take notes. The second thing I do is inventory what they think they own. My email account? Gone. My office? Cleared. Client files? The firm's property. But my methodologies? Mine. Over 24 years, I built regulatory tracking systems on my personal time. Checklists for mergers, escalation frameworks for Securities and Exchange Commission notices, templates refined across hundreds of transactions. Caldwell never asked for them. They did not understand their value. They live in my private cloud account, perfectly legal. The third thing I inventory is more important: relationships. I pick up my personal phone and scroll. Patricia Wells, Sarah Rodriguez, Jim Thompson, 35 chief executive officers, chief financial officers, and general counsels who have called me directly at 7 in the morning because they trusted me more than the firm's switchboard. These are not business cards from networking events. These are weddings I attended, hospital rooms I visited, crisis weekends where I slept on conference room couches to save their companies from regulatory disaster. You cannot confiscate trust. You can only test it. Tuesday arrives faster than expected. The standard club smells like polished wood and old money. 47 senior attorneys gather once a month to exchange war stories and subtle intelligence. I have attended for 16 years. When I walk in, conversations pause. Jim Harrison from Harrison Industries is the first to approach. Dan Morrison, he says, extending his hand. I heard you have big news. Chicago is a small city pretending to be large. News travels before facts. I keep my tone neutral. I am exploring new opportunities. That is all I say. I do not mention Bryce. I do not mention Taylor. I do not mention being escorted out by security. The restraint is intentional. By the time coffee is served, I have had 6 variations of the same quiet conversation. You deserved better. Strange decision by Caldwell. Let me know if you are available for project work. I do not solicit. I do not hint. I simply listen. Real business in Chicago does not happen at tables. It happens on golf courses. Saturday at Riverside Golf Club, I join a regular foursome I have played with for years. The 7th tee is where truth comes out. Jim Coleman lines up his shot and says without looking at me, I have 4 clients asking if you are available for regulatory consulting. My pulse remains steady. I am bound by certain agreements for 30 days, I reply. After that, I am open to conversations that comply with ethical standards. That sentence travels. Within a week, my phone vibrates more than it has in years. The first crisis call comes from Sarah Rodriguez at Great Lakes Holdings. It is 7 in the morning. Dan, she says, her voice tight. We just received a compliance notice from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Taylor filed what she called a standard response. The potential fine is $3.8 million. I close my eyes briefly. $3.8 million for a filing error. Sarah, I say carefully, I cannot provide legal advice without formal representation. but I can tell you this does not sound routine. You need specialized securities counsel immediately. She sends me the notice within minutes. I read it once, then again, my stomach tightens, but not from fear. From recognition, the Commission updated subsidiary reporting requirements 8 months ago. Companies had 45 days to remediate. The language in Taylor's response is generic boilerplate. It ignores the technical compliance trigger entirely. They have 9 days left. Sarah, I say quietly, this is not paperwork. This is exposure. You need emergency counsel today. By Thursday of that same week, 9 other clients call with variations of the same problem. Environmental disclosures filed incorrectly. Federal Trade Commission updates missed. Artificial intelligence compliance tools relied upon without human review. Taylor genuinely believes automation replaces judgment. It does not. Week 4 brings the call I knew would come. Patricia Wells. Her voice is controlled, but fury hums beneath it. Dan, the TechFlow acquisition closed, but there is a regulatory disclosure issue, a new Federal Trade Commission requirement. We are looking at $18 million in potential liability. $18 million. I flagged that requirement in my personal notes months ago. Those notes never made it into Caldwell's system. I cannot discuss specifics until my restriction period ends next week, I say evenly. But once it does, I would be willing to review the matter independently. There's a pause. Would Foster and Associates be interested in representing us? She asks. Foster and Associates, a boutique firm with a fraction of Caldwell's overhead and a reputation for surgical precision. I glance at my calendar. 6 days until my 30-day window closes. I believe they would be very interested, I reply. That night, I sit alone in my office again. The house is still quiet, but something has changed. This is no longer about humiliation. It is about momentum. I did not make a single phone call to solicit business. I did not violate the non-compete. I did not speak ill of my former firm. And yet, the calls keep coming because competence leaves a vacuum when removed, and vacuums create pressure. The real question is not whether Caldwell made a mistake. The real question is how long before the mistake becomes public. Stay with me, because when the founder finally called, his voice did not sound powerful. It sounded afraid. Stay with me, because pressure does strange things to institutions that were built on reputation. 3 days after Patricia's call, I receive an email from a junior associate at Caldwell. It comes from a personal account, no signature, no greeting. Is it true Taylor is signing response letters without review? I stare at the screen. Unauthorized practice of law is not a branding mistake. It is a bar violation. I do not respond, but I understand something important in that moment. Fear has entered the building. The Securities and Exchange Commission does not care about disruption. The Federal Trade Commission does not care about generational alignment. Regulators care about accuracy and signatures, and signatures leave fingerprints. The next call comes at 9:42 at night. Jim Thompson from Midwest Manufacturing. Dan, off the record, he says. Our environmental disclosure filing came back flagged. Taylor said the new federal reporting threshold was legacy language. What does that even mean? It means she does not understand what she is filing. But I do not say that. Jim, you need outside counsel immediately, I reply. Not tomorrow, tonight. There is a silence on the other end. Then he asks the question they are all circling. Are you coming back somewhere? I let the pause hang. My restriction period ends in 6 days. That is all I give him. 6 days. That number begins to matter. I print my tuition statement that same night. $32,000 due in 49 days. I place it on my desk. I do not hide from it. For the first time since being fired, something cracks. What if the calls stop? What if Caldwell threatens litigation aggressively enough to scare everyone back into silence? What if Bryce decides to make an example out of me? I lean back in my chair and stare at the ceiling. 24 years of discipline, hundreds of crisis weekends, missed birthdays, missed anniversaries. Was I naive to think competence would protect me? The doubt lasts less than a minute. Then my phone vibrates again. Sarah, the commission escalated, she says, her voice thin. They increased the potential penalty to $7.2 million after the supplemental filing. 7.2. Because the supplemental filing was also wrong. How many days left? I ask. 3. 3 days. And it will take at least 20 to remediate properly. This is no longer theoretical exposure. This is active damage. I close my eyes and feel something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not revenge, momentum. The following morning, another associate from Caldwell calls from a blocked number. They promoted Taylor to senior legal coordinator, he says quietly. Partners are furious. Two are interviewing elsewhere. The building is cracking, and I have not lifted a finger. By the time Friday arrives, my calendar for the following week is quietly full. Coffee meetings, catching up, exploring options. The language remains polite, but beneath it is a simple fact. Clients are afraid, and fear seeks stability. On the 30th day, at exactly 9 in the morning, I call Jim Foster. Daniel Morrison, I say. He laughs softly. I was wondering when you would. We agree to meet Monday. After I hang up, I step outside for air. Chicago wind cuts through my coat, sharp and honest. Across the skyline, I can see the Caldwell building. For years, I believed institutions were permanent. They are not. They are fragile ecosystems built on trust, and once trust fractures, collapse is rarely dramatic at first. It is quiet, subtle. Emails, unanswered. Calls redirected. Board members whispering. That afternoon, at 4:17, my phone rings. The caller ID reads, Charles Caldwell, not Bryce. The founder, I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answer. His voice is older than I remember. Smaller. Daniel, he says, and there is no buzzword in his tone. We need to talk. Now we are exactly where this story was always going. And what he asked me next changed everything. I do not make Charles Caldwell wait long. Mr. Caldwell, I say evenly. There is a breath on the other end of the line, not the steady inhale of a man in control. The thin, strained breath of someone calculating damage in real time. My firm is bleeding clients, he says. No preamble, no pleasantries. 23 companies have either terminated representation or requested proposals elsewhere in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I picture Bryce in that standing desk office, scrolling through a crisis he does not understand. Clients make independent decisions, I reply. This is coordinated, Charles snaps. Then his tone falters. This is retaliation. It would be easy to laugh. Instead, I say nothing. Silence is uncomfortable for men who built empires on authority. Daniel, he continues, softer now. Come back. Full partnership. Your own division. Whatever you want. I will handle Bryce. There it is. The offer I once would have killed for. 45 seconds pass between us. In that space, I see 24 years of missed dinners. I see my daughter waiting at school events. I see myself explaining to clients why internal systems were temporarily inefficient. I also see Taylor signing letters she does not understand. I do not want your title, I say calmly. I want my clients to be protected. Another silence. You are destroying a 48-year institution. No, I answer. You handed it to someone who did not know how to carry it. I end the call without anger. That evening, I meet Jim Foster. His office is the opposite of Caldwell's marble intimidation. Dark wood worn by decades of use. Shelves of actual law books. Windows that open. He pours 2 coffees. Bryce called me, he says immediately. Threatened litigation if we assisted you. And I told him Foster and Associates does not respond well to threats from children wearing expensive sneakers. I almost smile. Jim slides a document across the desk. Senior counsel position. 65% of originated revenue in my favor. Full malpractice coverage. Litigation defense if Caldwell attempts enforcement. This keeps you outside the non-compete structure, Jim explains. You are not competing. You are advising. He leans back. The clients are asking for you by name. That sentence lands heavier than any severance package. They are afraid, I say. Exactly, Jim replies. So we make the transition feel safe. He outlines the strategy with surgical clarity, no aggressive solicitation, no public statements, no mudslinging. We simply expand our mergers and acquisitions practice publicly. We attend every association event. We show up where stability matters. Jim calls it boarding a yacht. No one wants to jump off a ship into cold water, he says, but they will calmly step onto a better vessel. By Wednesday, the shift is visible. Sarah formally retains Foster and Associates for Emergency Securities and Exchange Commission remediation. Within 48 hours, we file a corrective plan that stabilizes her exposure. Patricia's board schedules a confidential review meeting with us. 2 additional clients request proposals. I still do not make a single outbound call. Everything is inbound. Thursday afternoon, Tony texts me again. They are panicking, he writes. Partners arguing in the conference room. Bryce blaming legacy systems. Taylor crying. I picture the disruption posters on the wall. I picture the standing desk. Institutions do not collapse in explosions. They collapse in arguments. Friday morning, Charles calls again. This time he does not accuse. How many clients are leaving? He asks quietly. I am not tracking your internal metrics, I answer. You are taking them. They are walking. His breath is heavier now. Bryce says you are orchestrating this. Bryce does not understand network effects, I reply. You built those relationships under my roof. I built them with my time. He hesitates. Then he says something I did not expect. I built this firm from nothing in 1976. There is pain in that sentence. For a moment, I almost feel sympathy. But legacy is not a shield against poor judgment. You made a choice, I say gently. So did your clients. When I hang up, I do not feel victorious. I feel inevitable. By the end of week 8, 28 out of 35 core corporate clients have either terminated Caldwell or initiated engagement with Foster. 28. Jim stands in my new temporary office, holding the updated intake sheet. I have practiced law for 38 years, he says. I have never seen anything like this. Neither have I. And we are not done because the consequences are no longer private. They are about to become public. On a gray Tuesday morning, 12 weeks after Bryce fired me, my assistant knocks on the glass door. Channel 7 is asking if you would like to comment. On what? I ask. She hands me her tablet. Caldwell and Partners has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. I stand slowly. Across the skyline, the Caldwell building reflects winter light like polished stone. Somewhere inside that building, Bryce is learning that competence is not optional, and in less than 5 minutes, I will watch him say it out loud on live television. If you think this story ends quietly, you do not understand how pride behaves under cameras. Stay with me, because what he admitted next erased any remaining doubt about who made the fatal mistake. Tôi tiếp tục. Chương 4. Public clapper. Catharsis. 500 từ. Ngôi ai. Con contraction. Nhịp chậm lại a reflection. Suck a cow chow. Number. Chapter 4. The conference room at Foster and Associates is silent except for the low hum of the television. Bryce Caldwell stands outside the federal courthouse, flanked by 2 attorneys who look like they charge by the second. The camera zooms in too close. I can see the exhaustion carved into his face. The designer confidence is gone. So are the sneakers. After losing approximately 80% of its Fortune 500 client base in under 3 months, the anchor says. 80%? That number does not surprise me. What surprises me is how small Bryce looks. A reporter steps forward. Mr. Caldwell, is it true that unlicensed staff were handling multi-million-dollar transactions? Bryce stiffens. That is a mischaracterization, he says quickly. We made strategic personnel decisions to modernize the firm. There it is again. Strategic. Another reporter interrupts. Did those strategic decisions include terminating senior attorney Daniel Morrison days before a $65 million closing? My name lands in the open air between cameras. Bryce hesitates, and in that hesitation, something irreversible happens. We needed alignment with our future direction, he says. Sometimes that requires difficult personnel changes, not performance based, not misconduct, strategic. Jim Foster, standing beside me, exhales slowly. He just dismantled any remaining claim they had, he says. On the screen, another question hits Bryce before he can recover. Is the firm facing malpractice exposure from 19 separate companies? His composure fractures. This is coordinated, he snaps. Competitors are exploiting a transition period. Competitors. I almost laugh. I have not said his name publicly once. I have not given a single interview. I have not violated a single agreement. And yet, the narrative is collapsing on its own weight. The camera captures a moment I will not forget. For 1 second, Bryce looks directly into the lens. Not defiant, not arrogant, lost. The broadcast cuts back to the studio. I turn off the television. The room remains quiet. There is no cheering, no applause. Just the steady awareness that a 48-year institution has filed for protection under Chapter 11 because someone confused disruption with competence. 6 months later, I stand in my permanent corner office at Foster. Real law books line the shelves. The windows overlook the river. My name is etched into the partnership directory. Austin texts me a photo of his transcript. Dean's list. Sophie sends a message that reads, "Dad, you did not break." My mother's care coordinator tells me she keeps mentioning how proud she is of her son. The Caldwell building across the skyline is no longer Caldwell. A technology startup occupies the lobby now. The portraits are gone. Institutions are not immortal. People are not interchangeable. Competence is not loud. It is consistent. I never filed a complaint. I never orchestrated a campaign. I simply remained available when stability mattered. Sometimes justice is not something you deliver. It is something you allow. So let me ask you something. If you were offered the chance to go back and save the firm that discarded you, would you have taken it? Or would you have stepped aside and let consequences do the work? Because here is what I learned at 49 years old. You can lose a job, you can lose a title, but if you protect your integrity and your relationships, you never truly lose your power. And that is something no standing desk can replace.